Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, it appears federal dollars meant for Montana hospitals are coming in, but are falling short. The nation's hospitals, the front line in the battle against the coronavirus, are in line to get more than $50 billion from Congress's new CARES Act to help respond to the pandemic. But so far, those dollars have been slow to arrive. And now a new study reveals hospitals that primarily serve the poor got the smallest share of the money. Q2's Jay Cohn gets down to the bottom of it in tonight's Montana Rebound report.
The study by the Kaiser Family Foundation included more than 4,500 hospitals nationwide. The bottom line, Congress based the CARES Act financial help on a hospital's revenue, not a hospital's need. The result, a sharp disparity among hospitals serving a majority of private insurance patients versus those with a high percentage of uninsured patients. Boiled down to per-bed costs, hospitals with a high percentage of private payees received as much as $44,000 per bed, while hospitals doing more charity work and serving as teaching facilities received less than half of that, $20,000 per bed. In Montana, it's a little different scenario, but still a case where it appears the CARES Act dollars may have missed the mark.
We had the lowest distribution of this last run of any state in the country. And we also happen to have the lowest incidence of disease. So we took on a lot of expense. We made major adjustments to operations to bring in the best approaches in public health, and we were successful in keeping the disease out of the state, but it didn't come without a cost. And unfortunately, the flow of dollars to date really has penalized highly efficient states like Montana.
When hospitals canceled all elective surgery to focus on preparing for COVID-19, their costs went up while revenue dried up.
Pre-CARES Act dollars, our loss was $13.44 million for the first 5 months of the year. And then the CARES Act dollars we received in April, we did recognize as income, and that was $10.64 million. So our overall loss now year to date through May, and your timing's perfect because we truly just have the financials through May, so fairly timely information, would be a $2.8 million loss at this point of the year.
Meanwhile, just down the street at Billings Clinic, the books here have been in the red for 3 months in a row. They're hoping that this month, the month of June, they'll finally make it back into the black. CEO Scott Elner says the financial impact of COVID-19 hit hard.
We've determined we've lost about $42 million in net revenue, which was a significant impact due to canceling of elective surgeries, shutting down our clinics, and really figuring out at the same time that we wanted to keep people employed. So we did not do any layoffs or furloughs.
In April, the clinic received $14 million in CARES Act funds, which helped, but that covers only about 1/3 of the clinic's cost. Both Elner and Pelagi credit the CARES Act dollars in helping both hospitals avoid layoffs or furloughs. In fact, Elner told us he was surprised at how fast the federal funds arrived. Looking forward, though, fingers are crossed as no one really knows for sure what's next. Rich Rasmussen at the Montana Hospital Association says buckle up for some tough days ahead.
This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It would be very different if we had a vaccine in place, and we don't. And we know, too, it's, at the same time that we have the likelihood of the COVID-19 surging in the fall, it's going to come the same time as we have traditional flu. So we'll have this confluence of infectious diseases potentially hitting us at the same time.
In Billings, I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
And Jay says both hospitals face a big challenge to replace the lost revenue. As you heard, the clinic estimates its net revenue loss by about $42 million. By comparison, for St. Vincent, about $33 million. So both say they've been reimbursed about 1/3 of their expenses. An update tonight as the Bullock administration has come under some criticism on its pace of dispersing federally funded aid to Montana businesses. The administration tells us another program to aid businesses should be unveiled as soon as next week. Now, that program, in partnership with Montana banks, is set up to help hard-hit businesses defer payments on their commercial loans. State Budget Director Tom Livers says the administration has been negotiating the details with banks for several weeks. Now, the state will cover a yet-to-be-determined amount of a business loan cost using money from the $1.2 billion pot of federal funds. The Montana Bankers Association and the Montana Chamber of Commerce say the program will be a win-win proposition for banks and business customers. Now, MTN News reported earlier this week that only 2.5% of those federal funds for Montana have been dispersed so far. Well, the Montana Department of Corrections may now have its first 2 cases of COVID-19 in a secured facility. 2 inmates at Montana Women's Prison here in Billings tested presumed positive for the virus on Tuesday. The inmates' samples have been transported to the state lab for confirmation. The Montana DOC is conducting sentinel testing of those who do not demonstrate active symptoms. The prison has implemented quarantine and isolation procedures. Riverstone Health is helping with contact tracing tied to the presumptive positive cases. Well, after receiving the results, the department tested all 194 inmates and 48 staff members at the women's prison. Well, in addition to the 2 cases at the women's prison, Custer County reports its first confirmed case of COVID-19 tonight. That individual is in isolation. And Bighorn County also adds another positive case late this afternoon. We're told that man in his 30s is now in the hospital. The man does have symptoms, and his case is not known to be associated with any other clusters in Bighorn County. There are now 61 active cases across the state, and 8 are in the hospital. Well, final numbers after 3 days of testing are coming in from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation tonight. Health officials say 1,735 people were tested in Rosebud County. That total also includes 444 Bighorn County residents. Well, one of the governor's plans as more tourists make their way into Montana is to ramp up community testing in destination areas. And that, of course, includes Carbon County. Q2's Russ Riesinger is in the newsroom tonight with more information. Russ, who are they hoping to test?
Well, Jeanelle, really anyone who wants to be tested. The community testing will take place this Friday and Saturday in Red Lodge. Again, this is for anyone who wants to be tested, and they want to get as many people out as possible. It's a kickoff to the surveillance testing that they are going to be doing weekly for a percentage of frontline workers in the Red Lodge area. That would include people who work in restaurants and some other businesses to get a representative sample as the summer goes on and more tourists come to town.
As the summer begins and as tourists come to this area, we'll be able to adapt to where are infections happening. Are they happening in restaurants? Are they happening during some of our summer events? Are they happening in grocery stores? It'll enable us to kind of look at kind of micro areas in our community and possibly make small mitigation, toggling our mitigation to these areas as opposed to just shutting down large parts of our economy.
The community drive-through testing will take place tomorrow and also Saturday from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. at the Red Lodge High School parking lot. That's on Chambers Avenue. And they're encouraging all permanent and summer residents in Carbon County to attend. And they're using the self-swab technique where you just basically swab the front of your nose with a Q-tip. So it's quick and painless and will give health officials a lot of important information that will show just how prevalent COVID-19 is there in Carbon County. Jeanelle?
All right. Thanks so much, Russ. Well, up next on tonight's 5:30 News, racing for a cause. The firefighter memorial run is still a go, but it's going to look a little different. We'll have the details. And in sports, from MSU national champion to California police chief, Scott shows us how this former player is managing today's unrest.
And coming up in weather, looks like our temperatures are getting ready to soar coming up this weekend. Temps getting into the 90s, but don't worry, it's not going to stick around very long. We'll roll back to the 70s next week. We'll tell you all about it coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.